You don't have to travel far in Leeds city centre before you are gazing upon a Potts clock. And what's not to like? They look great, they tell you the time, and they were manufactured here in Leeds. We have William Potts to thank for that. He was the founder and driving force behind Potts clocks, a major UK turret clock manufacturer, installing hundreds of clocks, not only in Leeds, but across Britain and the world. Though the story actually begins with Robert Potts, William's father, who was born in Northumberland in 1776. At 16, Robert was apprenticed to James Thompson of Darlington for 6 years, learning the art of watch and clockmaking. Following the death of his wife in 1814, Robert went to work for William Smith & Sons of Keighley, who manufactured spindles, flyers and guide wires for early spinning machines. William Smith made and repaired clocks in the evening, and for a time Robert used a corner of Smith's shop to make his own clocks. William was Robert's third son, and he followed in his father's footsteps as a clockmaker. At the age of 12, he left grammar school and went to work with his father in Keighley, where gradually his interest in clocks developed. In 1830, William went as an apprentice to Darlington, working for Samuel Thompson, son of James, who had trained Robert. At the end of his apprenticeship in 1833, William moved from Darlington to Pudsey, at first making small house clocks, supplying local shops. Robert helped him in the business until his death in 1839. In 1838, William married Elizabeth Banks from Pudsey. Elizabeth had inherited a good head for business from her father and a strong determination from her mother. By 1847, the family was living in a 3-storey property in Chapeltown, Pudsey. The property was demolished and replaced roughly 100 years ago, but it used to stand here. In the same year, William received his first major commission, a new clock for Ilkley Parish Church. He won the order after close questioning by the amateur horologist Edmund Beckett Denison, who later became Lord Grimthorpe. He had been brought in to advise by the Reverend John Snowdon. This clock survives in almost its original form, even though the dial fell from the tower in 1947. It now has a copper dial, still with the hands fitted by William Potts. William started to gain a wide reputation for his high-quality workmanship and reliability, and the demand for the impressive turret clocks was increasing. In 1862, Potts was commissioned to make 2 clocks for the new Leeds Corn Exchange, considered by many to be the greatest work of architect Cuthbert Broderick. The clock on the exterior of the building is set in a parapet above the main entrance, just below the building's unique oval dome, and is surrounded by elaborate scrolls. Inside there are now shops where once corn farmers and corn factors traded. The Potts clock high up in the roof is framed by stone sheaves of corn. Both clocks are in good working order, with the original dials still remaining, though the movements have been replaced. This significant commission may have encouraged the relocation of the business from Pudsey to Leeds city centre in 1862. The new premises were once here at 13 Guildford Street, on what is now the hedgerow between Butts Court and Green Dragon Yard, and not far from the town hall. The family lived through an arch behind in Butts Court. Potts' clock business was now really taking off. In 1865 the firm was appointed clockmaker to the Great Northern Railway, the first of many such appointments. Unfortunately, in 1866, William experienced an accidental fall, which led to him taking his son Robert into partnership. The company was now Potts and Son, and one of the clocks installed by Potts and Son can be seen on the south side of the river by Leeds Bridge. Another example is this one at Ilkley Methodist Church, added in 1868. In 1871, the firm became Potts and Sons, as James was taken into partnership. William's youngest son, Joseph, would also join the partnership later, meaning 3 of William's 4 sons would eventually join him in business. As demand increased, the workforce grew. On the census in 1871, the business employed 5 men and 2 boys. But by 1881, it had increased to 21 men and 4 boys. The company took additional premises nearby, on Guildford Street and Basinghall Street. The business was very busy with commissions. One example from this period is this clock at Christ Church upper Armley, which was completed in 1872. The widening of Boar Lane created a shopping street with fashionable and exclusive shops. This presented an opportunity for Potts to create 2 new clocks. The first of these was in the stunning Royal Exchange building that used to be situated on the corner of City Square. Sadly, it was demolished in 1966. Thankfully still existing today, though, is the clock installed in 1877 for the Griffin Hotel. Unlike Potts' usual design, which uses Roman numerals, the numbers here are represented by letters, spelling Griffin Hotel around the dial. One of the things which set Potts apart was their willingness to take on bold and innovative designs. This famous clock was installed in 1877. Its life-size wooden figures representing characters from Walter Scott's novel Ivanhoe. While the figures appear to be striking the bells, the working hammers are actually out of sight behind the clock. It continues to fascinate shoppers in the beautiful Thornton's arcade. Many of the clocks produced are recognisable as Potts designs. The Armley Board School on Armley Road includes a typical Potts clock, dating from 1878. The clock was such a recognisable feature of the building that it was known locally by everyone as the Clock School. And, even though it is no longer a school, the clock remains, and for many people, so does the name. Sadly, in 1887, William Potts died after a short illness. His final resting place is here, in Pudsey Cemetery, alongside his wife, who had departed 7 years earlier. Despite the loss of William, Potts clocks continued in its success. In fact, turret clock manufacture moved to grander premises at 19 Cookridge Street in 1887. A large wall clock once adorned the outside of this building, and a large company sign used to run across the roof line. To the rear, on Alexander Street, was Potts Yard and Access. Commissions came in from across the UK and wider world. Here's one for the Fishermen's Institute at Runswick Bay, which was unveiled on the 30th of July 1892. Leeds was undergoing enormous growth, leading to many commissions within the city. The old post office facing City Square was originally Leeds' largest post office and the city's telephone exchange. Creating a clock for such an important municipal building would have been a significant order for Potts and Sons, who received the commission in 1895. In 1898, a large quarter chiming clock was commissioned for the parish church, which had been rebuilt on the site of the medieval structure. The clock displays 4 illuminated dials, 8 feet 6 inches in diameter, on the 139-foot tower. This dramatic example of a large quarter chiming clock was installed in 1898 in the new Grand Arcade. Potts and Sons were delighted with this unusual timepiece. 2 copper bronze knights in armour struck the quarter hours with their battle axes, and as the clock struck the hour, 5 figures emerged on a turntable, including a guardsman who saluted and a Scotsman in Highland dress who bowed. As the figures passed back into the clock, a cockerel crowed and flapped its wings. Named in honour of Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee in 1887, Queen's Arcade was designed by Edward Clark and built on the site of the Rose and Crown Yard. In 1890, a clock was installed on a bracket on the Briggate entrance as a signpost for the arcade. The buildings now comprising the Victoria Quarter were originally designed by the theatre architect Frank Matcham and included his Empire Palace Theatre. This clock was incorporated as the construction was completed between 1898 and 1900. Armley Library was designed by Percy Robinson and completed in 1901, including an attractive clock tower with faces to 4 sides. Despite this continuing success, William Potts was still very much missed by his family, and in 1901 a memorial clock was completed in South Park in Darlington, his birthplace. It stands proudly today in the Grade II listed park. In the following year, many clocks were installed across the country to commemorate the coronation of King Edward VII. Potts received commissions for 17 church clocks, one of which was for the Holy Trinity Church on Boar Lane. When the church was built, its clock was made by Morgan Lowry of Leeds, one of the most famous makers of the time. Potts replaced it with a new hour-striking clock, housed in a 3-stage tower, which replaced the original tower and timber spire that blew down in 1839. Unfortunately, by as early as 1905, the demand for turret clocks was in decline. Soon the partnership became a limited company, with brothers James and Robert as principal shareholders, while Joseph left to start his own firm. Potts and Sons were still producing notable turret clocks, but not in such numbers. Holbeck Hall clock tower in Scarborough was completed in 1911. The Clock Cafe in Scarborough in 1913, and the aesthetically pleasing Braime's Works was also completed in 1913. But now, sadly, shares were dropping in value and profits decreasing. The company was slowly changing in size and direction. In 1927, retail premises were taken at 7 Commercial Street, and in 1928, a new factory was acquired in Burley for the mass production of small clocks. Frustrated at not being able to take charge of the firm, Robert Potts' son Charles began trading in his own name. When in 1934 the Potts and Sons business was sold to John Smith and Sons of Derby, Charles continued with his business, installing clocks worldwide and modernising many of the earlier clocks. This is an example at Prospect House on Sovereign Street. After Charles died in 1957, the business was sold to the Synchronome Company and managed by his son Tony. The last clock made by the company was installed in 1962. And so ends the story of Potts clocks. But not quite. Even though some turret clocks have gone over the years, we are left with literally hundreds of Potts clocks across the north of England and around the UK. Smith of Derby, who bought Potts in 1934, continue to service them. Potts clocks are here to stay. If you have enjoyed this video, check out the other Leeds local history videos on the Geography Juice channel. Thank you for watching.